New York Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo continues to resist calls to resign following allegations of sexual harassment from multiple women. And apparently, he isn't alone in thinking he should stay in office. According to a recent Quinnipiac University poll, 49% of New York voters do not believe Governor Cuomo should resign, compared to 43% who do. Caitlin Huey-Burns is here to discuss this. So, Caitlin, these are interesting numbers, considering sort of the onslaught of negative headlines the governor has been receiving over sexual harassment issues, how he handled COVID-19 with nursing homes. How does Governor Cuomo still have this much support among all New York voters?
Good morning, Anne Marie. That's the big question we had going into our reporting, seeing these poll numbers and trying to match them up with what we had been seeing in the headlines. A majority of the New York congressional delegation calling on Cuomo to resign, including the state's 2 senators. You've had lots of local officials calling on him to resign, and even Joe Biden has had to weigh in. And he said that if the investigation into these allegations confirms the allegations, that he should, in fact, resign. So you would think that would be the beginning of the end for a politician, but Cuomo is not heeding any of those calls. He has a notoriously frosty relationship with members of Congress, but what was really interesting that we found was when you look into the numbers in the polling, and multiple polls show this, that there are a couple of different dynamics at play. First, he's still getting high grades on his handling of the pandemic, even though he is even though that scandal about the nursing homes, and even though people are giving him poor grades on his lack of transparency around those numbers, they're still giving him high grades on his overall handling of the pandemic. But the other dynamic that we found that was really key is that his support among Black voters is higher than his support among any other groups when it comes to favorability, when it comes to handling the pandemic, when it comes to kind of all of these allegations. They are giving him much higher approval ratings and grades than other constituencies. So it was really no coincidence then that last week we saw Cuomo go to Harlem, appear with Black community leaders and church leaders to receive a dose of the vaccine. And at that event, he had some of those community members kind of speak up for him. And so that was significant. And this is a key constituency. And strategists that we've talked to and operatives in the state point out that Black voters are particularly sensitive and attuned to the issue of due process and waiting to see how the investigation plays out. So those are the dynamics playing in Cuomo's favor and what he's banking on at this point.
So, and I guess it's also no surprise that even more voters who vote on the Democratic ticket say that he should stay in office. It's 67% according to this Quinnipiac poll. So then the question is, how could this affect his chances of running for another term in 2022?
Well, that's the big question. So even though voters are saying, more voters are saying than not, that they don't want him to resign, the Siena poll found that a majority of voters don't want him to run for re-election. So you have this dynamic where they're saying, we don't want you to resign, but we don't want you to run for a 4th term. So that's kind of what he's up against, and that's what we're going to be watching. First, whether the investigation yields a confirmation of these allegations. If it does, that could completely change the dynamic, because these polls are a snapshot in time, and that could spur more people who have been on the sidelines to maybe stop rallying around him and say, look, it's time to go. But when it comes to next year, when he's trying to run for a 4th term, something that he's wanted to do, something that is a big ask generally, voters are saying, we prefer someone else.
Oh, that is fascinating. Caitlin, I'm sure this is a topic we're going to continue to talk about, especially as the investigations continue and we sort of find some sort of conclusion to them. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much.
Right.